welcome to the great state of Texas, where they say that everything is bigger and it's easy to imagine cowboys on horseback riding into town. But Austin has replaced saloons with technology and glimmering lights, so if you're looking to let the horses run, you need to find the right venue. Welcome to Circuit of the Americas, the world-class purpose-built Formula One racing circuit just outside the city limits, where Ferrari makes its triumphant return with Ferrari Racing Days and the second round of the 2023 Ferrari Challenge North America Series. A world-class facility hosting arguably one of the most recognized automotive marques in history. It's time to let the horses run.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a beautiful day at Circuit of the Americas, where we already have cars out on the track getting things ready to kick off the competition here in just a few minutes. I'm Shay Adam, joined in the booth this weekend by Mr. Brian Till, a Texas native who will be very glad to see some prancing horses out here in the fields of Texas.
I mean, what a place to be for Ferrari Challenge, for Ferrari Racing Days, this racetrack, this venue, the great state of Texas. I'm home. I feel at home at this racetrack, and I'm excited for what's about to come over the weekend.
There are 140 cars total, more than that, across all of the variety of things that we get to see, but nothing more exciting than the Ferrari Challenge cars back out once again. It is their second round of the championship here at Circuit of the Americas after we kick things off at Homestead Miami Speedway. We're only about 1,500 miles away from there, and next we go to Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta in the middle of May. Then a non-championship round taking place at the Circuit de la Sarthe in Le Mans. That will be the first week of June, but straight after there, back to championship at Montreal, a sport race for the Formula One cars. That's going to be a great opportunity to go out. We've also got at Sonoma Raceway in the middle of July, and then wrapping up the North American rounds at Road America, America's Park of Speed, in September the 8th through the 10th. So we are going to have a great time. But first, we get to celebrate being here in Austin, Texas. And here we are closer to Mexico City than we are in New York City.
Well, I never thought of it in that way, Shay, but what a racetrack. And you just went through the schedule. All world-class facilities, but think about Circuit of the Americas. This is a purpose-built racetrack built a decade or so ago for Formula One, specifically for Formula One. So it is one of those racetracks that you want to be on. That's where Ferrari Challenge runs all year long, right? All around the world, the racetracks that you want to be on.
Exactly. And right now, there's no better place to be than outside in the sunshine, where our very own Amanda Busick is enjoying a little bit of nice weather. But Amanda, it's still shady out there in the pit lane, isn't it?
I was about to say, it is lucky to be on this track, and as you guys are going through the schedule, you have to know these drivers has had this date circled all year long. You guys were talking about Ferrari Racing Days. Not only are we going to have back-to-back competition here, 2 days of race days for Ferrari Challenge, but it is a celebration of the prancing horse. We came off of the 75th anniversary last season, the 30th anniversary of Ferrari Challenge, and you look at the competition that's going to exist in this Trofeo Pirelli class. We're about to kick off qualifying here or there. You come off of that race in Miami, Shay, you were talking about all the storylines that happened there, but we'll see the return of the 2022 champ Jeremy Clark here today. He wrapped it up at the Finale Mondiale in Monza last year, so I'm excited to see him. And as you were saying, I told you, Shay, prior to this, I feel like I always talk about Manny Franco, but he is one to watch here in this qualifying, as he had some good practice laps as well and had a magical weekend at Cota here last year. But while you guys are up in the booth taking in that air conditioning, you know, the sun is starting to make its way out, but excited to be down here with all these Ferraris.
And you're right, Amanda, because Jeremy Clark coming back, that is a big focal point. The guy who came in last year won the championship after being 5th in Copachel the year before with 4 starts and 3 wins. He has been dominant in his presence in the series, but missing the Homestead weekend, well, that is a big thing that he's going to try and overcome, Brian. And last year at Circuit of the Americas, Jeremy Clark, that was the only weekend he had no top 10 finish, let alone for our championship winner.
Well, and Roberto Perina at Homestead was magic. He had a victory, a second place finish, a pole, a fast lap. And here's the problem with missing around. I always say this to drivers. It's like going back to elementary school or high school. If you make a 0 on an exam, it's all about averages, isn't it? It's hard to get an A in the class if you miss a test and get a 0. And coming back from that, especially when you've got performers in front of him, it's a long road to hoe.
It really is. And the good news for him, at least, is looking at Manny Franco and what Manny was able to accomplish last year, because he did miss a round of the championship, still came home second to Jeremy, and it was a very tight battle. His green flag is now out on the track. We'll bring you times as soon as they start to filter in. But it's not undoable. Manny actually missing 2 rounds of the championship, Montreal and Indianapolis, and still came home just a gnat's whisker shy of what we needed for him to be in there for the championship. But like I said, Jeremy Clark, 13th and 14th in the 2 races last year. They were the only race, this was the only race weekend where he didn't come away with the top 5, let alone a podium finish. So for Jeremy, he's got the unfinished business and the monkey on his back of saying, yes, I'm a series champion, but I don't yet have a trophy from Circuit of the Americas.
Well, and you want that, right? I mean,
exactly.
you look at these venues that you go to, and you always want to win, but especially at a racetrack like this, you want to put that feather in your cap. But here's the thing. First, you need to qualify. I mean, effectively, all of these cars are exactly the same. Qualifying is absolutely critical. You need to get out. You need to get the lap done. Amanda was talking about the weather. It's going to change over the next 10 minutes, and that means the balance of your car is going to change. These Pirelli tires on these Ferrari 488 Evos, the crews set the pressure where they think they should be planning for a tire pressure growth when the tire temperature gets in. When you come out to your car and you live in the Midwest, let's say, and it's 50 degrees, and then it's going to warm up to 80 that day, your tire pressures are going to change with the ambient air temperature. It's the exact same thing with these race cars, compounded by the problem that you get out there and you work these tires back and forth. It's like when you were a kid and you took a metal coat hanger and you bent it back and forth, it gets hot, right? It's that friction that gets hot. That heat builds, it helps the Pirelli rubber grab, but it also creates air pressure. That air pressure changes the spring rate of the side of the tire. So now the handling characteristic of your car change. The crew needs to be right on it with the tire pressure. You've got about 2 laps to get it right, and after that, the performance is going to fall away. So the good thing is the Pirelli class out there right now alone, so they've got plenty of racetrack to work with. Make sure that you get that clean lap and make sure you can get it done in 2, maybe 3 at the most, because at the end of the 3rd lap, the performance is going to fall off. Not a lot, but just enough to keep you from gaining a pole position, I would think.
Exactly, and right now we're watching one car who is very cognizant of going out there and getting it right. This is Tony Davis for Continental Autosport. Car number 4, Tony comes into this season in his 2nd ever season, but with a championship under his belt already. Trofeo Pirelli&AM cars out on track. Tony getting bumped up from Cota Shell AM to Trofeo Pirelli&AM. That is a jump completely over the Cota Shell. And you know what, Brian? He has been there and thereabouts. He got 4th in the first race, 3rd in the 2nd at Homestead, but he also claimed that fastest lap. Now he knows I can do a fast lap. I just need to do it in qualifying.
Well, it's kind of the be careful what you wish for, right? You want to run well, you want to win, you want to go out there and do your best. But if you do, and you're too good, well, guess what? You're moving up.
And that's why I love this championship, because the abilities of the drivers is what separates the classes. It's based on where race control thinks that you should be, based on the lap times that you're capable of doing. Tony was phenomenal last year. He learned super quickly. His son, actually, who goes to university in upstate New York, convinced Dad, hey, Dad, I'm going to buy a sim, and I'm going to do lap times that I bet you can't do in your actual Ferrari Challenge race car. That was the impetus for Tony Davis to continue to work and get better and faster, and it worked for him. It wound up with him not only a championship in his first year, but now he's up here competing already for podiums and potentially even race wins.
Watch him through the carousel, coming now into turn 19, a sweeping downhill left-hand corner. And this is one of those areas where the officials look for track limits at the exit of the corner. You need to keep at least 1 tire on that red and white curb. He's about to complete a lap through turn 20, down to 3rd gear, and then back on the straightaway and get that run. You need that good run out of 20 to start this lap, Shay, because just about at this point in time, you start this steep 5-story uphill climb to the apex of turn 1, and you need that momentum to carry you up the hill. About 145 miles an hour at the braking zone, and then down to 2nd gear through turn 1. Turn 1 only about a 40-mile-an-hour apex.
Jeez. Well, and for Tony Davis, that was a great opening gambit, because he did a 2:11.380. That's faster by 0.3 than his best lap of the weekend thus far. So Tony Davis clearly feeling very comfortable with the conditions this morning.
And you talk about the weekend, it really is almost the week, right? They
Yeah.
come in on Wednesday, so they can test on Wednesday and Thursday. And one of the things that I really admire about Ferrari Challenge, all of these drivers are required to have a coach. So you've got professional race car drivers, which if you've been to sports car races around the North America continent at least, and if not the worldwide stage, you would recognize these driver coaches that are here. They can work with the coaches on Wednesday and Thursday. The coaches can drive the car, help them set it up, give them target laps to go for. But starting on Friday, the coach can coach, but he no longer gets in the car. It's all about the driver. So they've got that help, that expertise. Not surprising to see that fast lap, because all throughout the week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they're going to run on older tires. They're not going to put that sticker tire on and go out and try that ultimate lap. But you have to have some idea what it's going to be like, because you got to throw it down, as we were saying, in these first 2 or 3 laps.
And so far, the guy who has thrown it down the hardest is Brian Kaminsky in car number 71. And you talk about the coaches. Well, he's coached by 5-time Rolex Daytona winner, Andy Lally. That's a pretty good guy to have in your ear telling you how to go faster.
Well, and that's what I was saying. You look at the expertise here, and you walk through the paddock, and you go, oh, Rolex winner, Sebring winner,
Yep.
IMSA champion, and it's just the resumes are spectacular. And I would think what we would see is not the level of competition that we see in Ferrari Challenge were it not from that input.
Agree. We've got Mark Musso out on a flying lap right now. He is pushing his Ferrari very hard. That would be car number 13 for Ferrari of Ontario. TP&AM champion in 2017 and race winner here last year in race number 2. He got a second in the first race. Well, he's inverted those results so far for this year, taking the win and the fastest lap of the first round of the championship at Homestead, resulting with him coming away second place points in the TP&AM category. Let's see if he can claim one more by getting a pole position here today. Can he jump to the top? No, not on that lap, but we expect more from Mark Musso.
I think he lost a little bit coming through 20 that time, Shay. When you looked at the setup for the corner, running on that curbing at the exit is not really an issue, but you'll notice Musso dropped that right side tire over those curbing. That's going to affect the anti-lock braking system when you get on that rough pavement. May take some of the stability of the car away, and as you begin to pick up the throttle, the traction control may interfere too much. Not a big problem way out there at the exit, but corner entry, we were talking about turn 20. It finishes the lap that you were just on, so you've got to have the good run off the corner to get that lap time. And if you don't, you're going to suffer on that lap and the next one as well because of that long run up to turn 1.
Yeah, and it's going to take a while to get back around because this isn't exactly the shortest of the tracks either, so that affects you too.
Well, you only have 15 minutes to do it, right? And you look at a 2-minute plus lap, so best case scenario, you're going to get 6 laps, but in reality, an out lap, an in lap, you really probably can only get at the most 5-time laps, and we said the last 2 are probably not going to be the ones that you're going to put in the bank.
We just got a look there of our championship leader in the Trofeo Pirelli&AM class. That would be Mr. Chuck Whittle, another one of the guys making a jump up last year running in the Cota Shell class. He did get a win. Wasn't here at Circuit of the Americas, but Chuck looking for a good weekend. Unfortunately for him, he gave Mr. Michael Porter a great tow across the line, and it jumped Michael up to what was then the second best time. Now that's down to third because our pole sitter from Homestead for race number 1, Brian Cook, Cookie as he's affectionately known to his coach, Mr. Mark Miller, has jumped up into second, still half a second away from the time that Brian Kaminsky was able to lay down. And Kaminsky, by the way, saving his tires, dove into the pits, one and done.
Wow, and you get 2 sets of Pirelli tires for the races and qualifying. So let's say, to make it simple, that was a little wild at the exit there.
That was a big wiggle for Mr. Whittle.
So you got 2 sets. So you're going to qualify on set 1 and race on set 1, and race 1 and qualifying 1. Same with qualifying 2 and race 2. So you don't want to put a lot of laps on them. It'll take some of the go fast out. The Pirelli tires really good. Every race tire will always fall off after the first couple of laps. What you're looking for is a tire that's then going to stay stable and not continue that downward plunge. Yep. Pirelli has done a great job at coming up with a new tire for this 488 Evo package, and it does seem to be very stable. It has some fall off, as you would expect, but then after that it stays very consistent. At Homestead, now that was a different ball game altogether. You think about the aggregate that racetrack is made of. They take the aggregate from around that area. What is it?
Sand.
It's sand and seashells.
Yep.
And they're all
limestone.
Yeah,
yes.
And they're all crushed up, and it's like a cheese grater on the tire. So We saw some tire degradation on rear tires at Homestead. I think this racetrack, I call it a little more pushy. You can tend to get a little more understeer, which means the front end of the car struggles to gain grip, and you want to turn the wheel more. Your psyche is saying, hey, I'm not turning enough, I need to turn more, and that just exacerbates the problem. You've got to take care of the front tires here, just a different aggregate, different kind of racetrack, and you need to take care of those because you don't only have these couple of laps of qualifying, like you were pointing out, Shay, you've got a 30-minute race to run as well.
Exactly, and where there's going to be a lot more traffic for you to deal with and a lot more push because the aero wash from other cars that will be around you.
And you mentioned the toe. I mean, the back straightaway here and the front straightaway are very long, 165 plus miles an hour at the end of the back straightaway in the braking zone for turn 12. You can get a good toe from the car in front of you down the back straightaway and up the front straightaway as well. And it may only be a couple of tenths, but guess what? Right now, it's only 5 tenths between first and second. A couple of tenths, if you were in fifth right now, a couple of tenths would move you up to second.
Yeah, it's a very close field. And
like, you want everything, right?
Exactly. The
greedy race car drivers.
Greedy race car drivers. You can't help them. The best part of this series is that you're racing everyone around you when you're out there on the track. But in qualifying, it's just you and your car. Yeah. This is when you find out what you're made of. Just McCabe Wang is circulating around the backside of the track. He's coming into the left-hander that then sets you up to the run to what I consider to be one of the trickiest parts of this racetrack because at this point, Brian, if you screw up, it's a long way down that back straight.
Well, and that's the thing about motorsports. And I was actually talking to McCabe Wang about it yesterday, about the patience and the mental game that driving a race car is. It's so easy to get impatient and overdrive and push too hard. And a lot of times, slower is faster. Turn 11 is one of those corners, Shay. If you get it right, it pays dividends all the way down the straightaway. Let's say you gain a mile an hour at the exit faster than what you did the previous lap. That mile an hour is going to be multiplied all the way down the back straightaway. You may now have 2 or 3 miles an hour at the end of the back straightaway more than you had before. But if you have to breathe off the throttle coming off the corner because you're not on the right line and you hesitate, that hesitation gets magnified all the way down the straightaway as well. So that little bobble in the corner, you talked about it, I believe it's the most important corner on the racetrack.
And there's only so far you can push against the throttle stop before it's not going to go anymore. But if you're wondering why we're seeing fewer cars out on track right now, it's because we have about half the competitors in the pit lane having done their lap times and decided nothing faster is going to come of it. But we still have drivers out there pushing very hard. Michael Porter has come into the pit lane and gone back out. So that's interesting to see with under 2 minutes to go.
I would think that what they did was they came in and made a tire pressure adjustment. What we talked about that a little while ago. You stay out there, the pressures build, the tires get hard, the spring rate of the sidewall of the tire goes up, the handling goes away. Oftentimes you can come in, release some of that added pressure that you don't want, soften up the tire a little bit, soften up the suspension, but the tire is still hot. So if you've overheated it, it's going to cool down a little bit. You may get 1 lap, but I guarantee you, you're not going to get more than that.
No, and I'm surprised to see Tony Davis is still out there running around as well. I thought that he would have called it a day, but his last lap, 1.2 seconds off of the pole position. So it looks like for now, at least, Brian Kaminsky is safe, but Tony Davis backed out of it. I was going to say he has time for 1 more lap to complete this one, but unfortunately it looks like he has let off the throttle and will start in the 6th position at the best for Tony, as Mark Muzo still pushing hard as well. And a big wiggle there. That was Jay Logan for Boardwalk of Ferrari making his debut in this championship this weekend. Well, this class, I should say. He has run in Copa Shell in the past. This is a very different ball game, Brian, especially when we come to race time, and he's got people ahead of him for the first time.
And he is on it. I mean, he's pushing hard. 31 seconds to go. It'll be interesting to see if he gives up the ghost here or if he thinks he's on a lap. Looking at timing and scoring and seeing if that moved him up. He's in the 7th position. Don't think it did.
No, I don't think so either.
And this is where that coach comes in, Shay, saying in your ear, you know what? It's all right. Let's just be calm. Let's just bring it in. Let's save those tires for the race. As the race car driver, you're like, no, 1 more. I could just do 1 more. I could just do it a little bit better. It looks like he's now backed off and is going to say, all right, let's conserve. We've got a race to run tomorrow. It's really 2 parts, isn't it?
It really
is. This is part 1. You do the best you can, and if you don't get it done to your liking, you've got the opportunity to make some changes, for the race, and then get back out and see what you can do come race time. And we got qualifying again tomorrow.
Exactly. And green flag for this one is, what now, 6 hours away.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of time to go through the data, see where maybe you lost a tenth or two, see where maybe you're stronger than your teammates. And you look at the cars that we have in this field, every dealership is bringing at least one, more likely 2, 3, 4, 5 cars. That's a lot of data to come through. Well, let's go talk to our pole sitter. Once again, we're at Circuit of the Americas, so it's only fitting that Brian Kaminsky is on pole, Amanda.
And I think it's almost fitting the hat wear that he decided for this interview. I promise he came off with his helmet on, but Brian, you set that lap time with almost 0.5 of a second on the field. Where on this track did you find that advantage?
You know what? It's really off the track that you find the advantage, and it's all been in the preparation. We worked really hard on the sim and just get my physical conditioning around for this, and it's been clicking. It helps having a 5-time Daytona winner Andy Lally on your side in the radio, so it's been really good, and it's a good weekend. We have the kids from our foundation, Kids for Kids, here waving the green flag for tomorrow, and Bobby Hotel helped us out a lot getting here, so it's been great.
Can you tell us about the track and kind of the sweet spot with the Pirellis? Where did you feel you really found it on those laps?
Yeah, I mean, it's really just your out lap, getting some heat in the tires, and taking advantage of the peak tire, which I thought was, lap 1, just getting right at it. So the temperatures are right. This is the fastest the track has been, I think, all weekend, and just to get one of those laps where everything goes right, it usually doesn't happen, but today it did. So
thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great start for his weekend, and also for Ferrari of Long Island coming into this weekend. 4th in the dealers' points. Well, now they've got one more point added to their total, and they are closing in on Ferrari of Lake Forest. So this is going to be a fun race. But let's see where everybody's going to line up when we go green later on, at least in this category.
There's your pole position. And Kaminsky said it. The first lap, and we talked about that, making sure the team has the pressures right. You talked about that as well, the preparation. And just getting it done, getting on it, getting it done. He did.
Brian Cook starting alongside him with Mark Muzo just behind Michael Porter in the 4th position. Justin Rothberg, a great qualifying to be up there in 5th. Now, the one that I'm concerned about, Omar Balkasu, no time registered. Omar is someone who's always fun to watch. He runs the Star Wars liveried car that his kids have designed for him. So I'm going to have to find out why we didn't see Omar in that session. But that sets us up for a really exciting first lap later on.
When you talk about the pole position there and Ferrari of Long Island, don't forget they've got a car that's about to run in this next qualifying session. What kind of information do you pass along to Joe Rubo that he can use in qualifying to see if he can make it 2 poles for that team, that organization? Because Kaminsky was spectacular on his run, and as he said, you got to get out there, you got to get it done right away. And I know that he will have talked to Joe and say, all right, this is what I found on the racetrack, this is what it was like, and they'll share that information back and forth. They're not competing, remember, they're in different classes, so you're going to share with your teammate all that information, see if you can give him a little heads up, a little advantage.
And that's exactly what worked at Homestead. For day 1 of qualifying, we had Ferrari of Seattle on pole in Trofeo Pirelli and Trofeo Pirelli&AM. It was within the team, that sharing of the integral knowledge that you don't get when you're sitting there on the sidelines watching, or perhaps even sitting in your car.
Well, and you see it all over the world in various classes and various series. When you run more than one car, you get at least double or triple or quadruple, or in Conquest Racing world, I think they've got 13 cars in different classes here running in different things with Ferrari Racing Days. But you get all that data and all that information, and what works for one driver, you can pass on to the other and say, hey, this guy tried this, it worked. Do you guys want to try it? And you can share that back and forth. And when it comes to qualifying, Brian was just out there on the racetrack, and Joe hasn't been yet. So he can say, this is what's different than yesterday. This is what's the same. There's time to be made here. There's not time to be made here. Go for it, buddy. You got it.
Yeah, and for Joe Rubo, he comes into this weekend. This is practically a home race for him. He's got a house in Lakeside, which is just up the street a little bit. He was playing around. Which is beautiful. He was playing around on some jet skis yesterday after the long day at the track, just to decompress and hanging out with his coach, Ryan Eversley. But for him, it's going to be about fighting the guys ahead of him, at least so far from practice. We've got Custodio Toledo in car number 88, who has been phenomenal. This is the first track that he's returning to in the Ferrari Challenge. All the tracks last year were brand new for him. Well, he raced at Cota last year, and he raced here successfully, so that's going to be a feather in his cap, a 5th and a 2nd in last year's season.
And he's a student of the game. He just started racing last year and got thrown in the deep end in the racing that he decided to do, and was spectacular. I had the pleasure of dealing with him in some racing that I do as well outside of this series. And to see him here and his performance this weekend, his performance at Homestead, I watched that intently because he's such a likable driver. And I think that's the other beautiful thing about this paddock. Everybody that I've met this weekend, everybody that I've talked to has been so likable, so personable. And the conversations that you have, it's just a joy to be here. And I think it's why you see the growth in this series that you have. But for Custodio, he's, like I said, he's a student of the game. He focuses on it intently. A lot of these drivers do. Their real life is so high pressure. This is their vacation. 165 miles an hour in a Ferrari 488 Evo Challenge this is their vacation. This is their downtime. This is their relaxation because they live in a high-stress business world. A lot of them do, and they apply the same level of concentration to this that they do in their business world. They're highly successful, and they're looking for that same success to be translated to the racetrack.
And to think, this instead of laying on a beach in Bali. Yep,
Well, I mean, I could do both. I mean, if you gave me the opportunity, I would be glad with both.
Oh,
but
I know where I would spend my money, and it would be right here to get the opportunity to wrangle a prancing horse around Circuit of the Americas, which is exactly what Matt Krzyzewski is trying to do right now, warming up his tires very, very diligently, very slow outlap to try and get all the heat properly into the Pirellis, and actually holding up Dave Musial Jr. 2.0 behind him, but not really holding him up because if David wanted to get around, he would have.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's in a hurry right now, and we're used to seeing cars weave back and forth to kind of try to generate some temperature. But really, a lot of that weaving back and forth helps clean off the tire, get that Pirelli nice and clean and ready to go. Does heat up the sidewall a little bit, but the other thing you'll see these drivers do, both here in qualifying at the beginning of the race, is on and off the brake pedal a lot because the brakes generate massive heat. That heat is transferred into the wheel. The metal wheel gets warm and it transfers that into the air that's in the tire.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of tire temperature via the brake of McCarthy with the big slide. Obviously has the traction control turned down. These cars are so sophisticated. 2 different traction control setting. In the simple world, it's when and how much are the 2 knobs. Basically, you can adjust when you want it to come in. If you want it to slide a little more, move a little more freely off the corner, you can turn it down. And then when it does come in, you can decide how much you want it to intrude with the other knob. So that's the 2-level traction control. And where.
Front and back. That's the other big thing, too. And Jason McCarthy's been in this championship long enough that he knows exactly how to perfect those knobs on the steering wheel. And for Jason, this weekend, it's a big one because the 2021 TPM1 champion, he's looking to try and get back to those podium ways. He had a great start at Homestead Race 1, not a great Homestead Race 2. So Jason McCarthy coming back to Circuit of the Americas, very aware that this is a place where he can not only do well, but dominate. So he's going to try and do that this weekend. Joe Rubo, the guy we were talking about being a local, well, he is right behind McCarthy, and both of them are pushing very hard. Just watching the body language of the cars twitching all around. Brian, it looks like Rubo got a good run on the back straight.
Well, and it's exactly what we heard after the first qualifying session. This is the lap. I mean, it really is. This one and the next one are the ones where the Pirellis are going to be at their best. So you got to lay it down. And with Joe Rubo knowing this racetrack as well as he does, and the car as well as he does, this is his opportunity to shine. The beautiful thing is he's got McCarthy in front of him. He may want to turn up the traction control just a little bit there, Shay. He's got McCarthy in front of him. If he can close the gap a little bit on this second lap, he may get the advantage of that draft, that tow down the back straightaway. You were talking about jet skis. Basically, the tow or the draft is the car in front, just like a boat, pushes the air in a wake, just like a boat pushes water out of the way, and the car behind has less work to do. So you can gain a mile an hour up to 3 miles an hour or so down these long straightaways if you can get up close to somebody. What you don't want, though, is to get up close and then be stymied by them in the brake zone. You want to be able to use that to your advantage and not get held up.
Is that a piece of paper in the passenger side window of McCarthy? It almost looks
Just
like
parking
there's
pass.
something blocking his vision, so he doesn't have to look behind him as Joe Rubo does go to the top after that opening gambit, quickly surpassed by Matt Kurgieski, guy who got the pole in the second race at Homestead Miami Speedway, 2:07.923. That is still 2/10 off the fastest lap so far of the event, which goes the way of Manny Franco. Manny has not yet done his fast lap.
Look how knife edge the 8.8 is, just sliding through the corner.
Oh boy, Custodio Toledo clearly very comfortable coming back to a track for the first time. We're looking for a 2:07.923. Can the Brazilian do it? As his time registers. No, he was good enough for fourth that lap, fifth overall.
I don't think it's there yet. I think his tires are still coming in, and it's one of those deals. Look how nervous the car is there at turn in. It just seems like a cat up on a hot tin roof, right? I mean, it's just up on its tiptoes. And you look at Clark here.
Here's Jeremy Clark, our championship winner from last year, coming through turn 19, planting the car into turn 20. Still a lot of wiggle in the nose, Brian.
But you saw how stable Clark was through the carousel 15 and then through 19, that fast left-hand sweeper versus Toledo. Just before that, the car dancing around. This was a much more stable ride.
Yeah, they are still in the warm-up phases, as you very rightly say. Still not quite there yet with the fast laps. So it is Matt Kurgieski thus far leading the way from Joe Rubo. Brian Kaminsky's time still good enough for third on the grid. Then we find Jason McCarthy and Custodio Toledo. We are waiting for everybody else, as Manny Franco should be our next one to come and set a fast lap. I would look at Manny to be potential for that pole position, as well as Roberto Perena, because Roberto claimed a pole position at Homestead.
How many of these drivers are you going to name off with a shot for the pole?
Very fair point. Very fair point.
And that's the beauty of the competition, right? You look at this championship, and the first 6 drivers are right there. Now, granted, it's only been 2 races, but what it shows you is how tight it is, and consistency is going to win this championship. It always does in any championship that you go to. We were talking about that earlier. It's like a GPA, right? You got to have a good average to get it done. But yeah, it's so close right now, and you want to qualify up front. It's going to give you an advantage in the race.
Here we go with Manny Franco. A very similar livery, by the way, to our championship winner last year, Jeremy Clark, so that might catch us out during the race. But Manny, coming around the backside of the track, just left the pit lane not very long ago, so still is yet to put up a fast lap. Martin Burrows, another one of those guys I'm always going to put in context for a race win. Martin's still warming up his tires as well, so we've got some big hitters who have yet to set a fast lap time. As Dylan Medler just crosses the start-finish line, he's still warming up too.
Carlos de Quesada out there just jumped up to 6, so he's getting up to speed. There's a man, you look at de Quesada, he's won the Rolex 24 in 2007. He won it in 2017 again with his son co-driving, and co-driving with his coach, JF Dumoulin. So, I mean, you think about all in the family kind of stuff, and you think about the history and the experience these drivers had. And of course, for Carlos de Quesada, I know you know this is where his racing started. He's also doing offshore power boats, which I think is absolutely insane. But Ferrari Challenge is where he started. It's also where he met his wife. So, I mean, kind of a special place. He was like, I could do other series, but this is fun for me, and this is more fun, and that's what it should be about.
2.0 with his hands full coming through turn 11. He had his fingers off the steering wheel trying to just balance it through. That was very dignified there, Dave. His senior not racing this weekend, focusing on what 2.0 can accomplish. Dave, we miss you. We can't wait to see the Joker car back in the field. Hopefully later on this season. His 2.0 very nice into the apex. And again, the fingers coming off the steering wheel. I'd like to see that
just nice and relaxed. What you don't want to see is him looking like he's in a boxing match with his fists wrapped around it. Because when you're holding onto the wheel like that, you really can't get the feedback that it's trying to give you. You need to be light. You get a lot of feel. People say you drive by the seat of your pants. Yes and no. You do need to feel that, but you need to feel the wheel. The steering wheels are trying to tell you something. They're trying to give you information. And even with a car with power-assisted steering, you got to feel that. You've got to feel what that input is, what that feedback is, and adjust accordingly. I'll tell you, 2.0, or the 31 car, I should say, little nervous there as well. I mean, these cars look like they're kind of a little loose. You know, one of the things that the new aero package did on the Evo was plant the front end a little bit, and these coaches and drivers trying to get these cars to turn a little bit around this racetrack that we said is a little bit pushy. But that's great in turn 12. That's a 45-mile-an-hour corner. But when you're coming through the carousel at 80 or 90 miles an hour, any adjustment of the throttle moves even more weight to the front end of the car and makes it really plant that front end along with the aerodynamics. And what you've got is a car that's steering with the back, and you really don't want that, Shay.
No, oversteer, no bueno, no thank you. As Custodio,
it's impressive to watch.
It's very fun to watch. Custodio Toledo moving up a position, so clearly there is still time to be found out on the racetrack. Matt Krzyzewski into the pit lane, having once again thrown down the fast lap and decided, all right, everyone come chase me. Well, unfortunately for him, some big guys are out there chasing him, and we do still have 4.5 minutes left of this qualifying session. As Matt getting out of his Ferrari, again, having done everything he needs to do thus far. Jeremy Clark is on a flyer, and here we go. Manny Franco sets his first lap attempt, and he is half a second off the time of Krzyzewski. That's an impressive lap from Matt, just putting it in context.
Yeah. Well, and I think Clark improved a little bit as well. I had seen a 7/10 gap back. It's only 6/10 now, but Manny Franco, he may have an answer on this next lap, and then I think he's done as far as the Pirelli tires go. But a half a second in hand right now for Krzyzewski.
We've got Brandon Cruz out on the racetrack. That is car number 37, the all-red Ferrari. That's Ferrari of Central Florida. The man who burst onto the scene a couple years ago at VIR rain races. He's going to be hoping that we get a little bit of precipitation. Won both of them. It was very impressive. And then last year just did a handful of races, but he and his wife Amanda, very much a part of this Ferrari Challenge paddock family. And for Brandon, it's good to see him turning some laps after missing most of the practices yesterday, or at least not registering a time. Could have been a faulty transponder.
Yeah, it could have been a transponder issue for sure. This is the thing that's great about this racetrack, Shay. So you just went through about a 45-mile-an-hour corner, turn 12 at the end of the long back straightaway. 165 miles an hour right here at this point on the brakes, down through the gears, down to about second gear, and then accelerating off of this corner. That's Manny Franco in the 18.
Not satisfied with second place.
Not satisfied, no. Through the carousel here, and now into the slowest corner. You're around this carousel, into turn 15, on the brakes hard here, about 38 miles an hour at the apex of 15. Off of that corner using every bit of road, almost a little too much. Here's the big carousel. 16, 17, that's going to bring you over here to 19. The very, very quick left-hand bend that takes you down to the final corner. He's got a slower car in front of him. Hopefully that car gets out of the way. Through the apex nicely, and he's off the pace. He's lifted.
He's pitting.
He's done.
Oh no, he must have seen on the predictive on the dashboard that it wasn't going to be moving him up at all and deciding to save a little bit for the race. So I think that will be Matt Krzyzewski on pole. We're not going to give it to him just quite yet because we do still have Joe Rubo and Roberto Perena out on track, as well as Brandon Cruz, who completes that lap 2:11.049 for Cruz. That is Roberto Perena, our pole sitter from Homestead from race number 1. He's still pushing as well, and that lap was not an improvement. So maybe Perena is going for one final flyer on this one, because it looked like he did still have pace in the car coming through turn 20.
Well, if you're going to try to bank one last lap, you want to slow down, kind of cool things off through that turn 12, 13 area. Let the tires cool down just a little bit, maybe even more than that. Let them cool down the back straightaway, get them nice and cool, and then charge through 20. Get that big run up the front straightaway. See if he can get it done. He is your championship leader as we come into the weekend. Perena is pole at Homestead in race 1, fast lap in race 1, victory in race 1, second in race 2.
With 29 points off the end of the weekend, we're second in the championship. Jason McCarthy and Matt Krzyzewski on 18. That's a big advantage for Roberto Perena coming into this weekend.
He's giving it up.
Oh, he backed out. So that means that Matt Krzyzewski will be our pole sitter for race number 1. And once again, the man whose background is in ARCA and trucks finds success at a track where NASCAR races.
Well, we talk about how important qualifying is because of the position here, and the racing is so close, it's difficult to pass. So it's one of those deals that, yeah, you want the track position, but what else do you want?
You want the point.
You want the point.
You
Absolutely,
want the point
Shay.
for pole. There's a point for pole, there's a point for fastest lap, and then, of course, you get the money when you win the race.
Yeah.
So you want the most points off the weekend, and Matt Krzyzewski chasing this championship in earnest.
It's what he needs, right?
It's what he needs.
Every point.
So the time has now expired, meaning that all the cars will come back into the pit lane. Brandon Cruz seeing the checkered flag out on the track. Roberto Perena should dive into the pit lane since he had backed off, meaning Matt Krzyzewski, congratulations once again. But this is going to be a difficult race for him with Manny Franco alongside and Jeremy Clark right behind, and then Jason McCarthy in fourth. Those are three drivers behind Krzyzewski who really want to win.
Let me ask you this important question, though, about Cota. Would you go up there?
Up the tower?
Yeah.
Sure.
No.
I'll race you up the stairs later.
If there's an automatic defibrillator at the top, maybe I'll go, but otherwise I don't think so. That and standing on the glass floor that's up there in the tower, I don't know about standing on the glass floor and looking down.
You're not a fan of not heights, but the falling and then hitting something and abruptly stopping.
The height is not the problem. It's the stop at the end. Look at downtown Austin. Absolutely beautiful. My home state, the capital city, it is beautiful, and these Ferraris in this paddock this weekend. Ferrari racing days, and the machinery is stellar. So was the lap that Krzyzewski's put in.
Really was. Half a second clear of Manny Franco in second. Jeremy Clark returning to the championship after winning it last year, starts third. And Jason McCarthy, a good qualifying effort to be there in fourth. We've got 2.0 in fifth with Joe Rubo alongside him for company. Roberto Perena, championship leader, going to have his work cut out for him starting in seventh with Custodio Toledo alongside Michael Petramalo is in ninth, and Dylan Medler rounding out the top 10. It's going to be a very competitive field, though, because there's not a lot of time between those 10. Carlos de Quesada, Martin Burrows, and Brandon Cruz rounding out the Trofeo Pirelli field, setting us up for what should be a very exciting race start for race number 1 later on this afternoon.
And the racing here is always interesting. You know, I was talking about this racetrack. It has everything, Shay, right? It has the high-speed S's where the car has to work aerodynamically. It's got the big braking zones, turn 11, turn 12, into turn 1, and those big braking zones also widen out,
Yes.
and they tempt you to come on in, and a lot of times, yeah, no, not so much. It doesn't work.
Well, Amanda, how important is it going to be for Matt Krzyzewski to have a clear view into turn 1?
Oh, I imagine having that front spot is going to be exactly what he wants, picking up the pole position here today. And Matt, we were talking about just all of the talent that is going to be surrounding you, beside you, behind you. You look at the top 5 separated by almost less than a second. Talk about the parity and the competition we're going to see as you lead this field to green.
The competition in the Pirelli series is very high. It's stiff. I'd say any of the top 4 or 5 cars could win any day. Today was completely unexpected. Figured Manny's been quick all week. Didn't think we'd be able to pull it off. So happy but more relieved than anything. Next thing is going into turn 1, P1, with no one in front of me but someone behind me. So last year that didn't work out too well.
I saw your eyes light up when you saw this plate. It is an outline of Cota that you just dominated here. Where are you going to hang that one?
I don't know. It's got a looks like it might go well on a Christmas tree. Like it's already prepared for it. So maybe we'll they're in the kitchen so that I can show all my family when they come hang out.
I don't know if there's a better ornament, guys.
That is a perfect idea for use of these trophies as you're getting this year.
You need big tree, though.
You need a very
You need
big
a
tree,
big
but
tree.
well, you know, Christmas is still a few months away. You can grow a big tree in the time between then. Well, don't go too far away because we have more excitement coming up for you. We've got a Formula One car that's going to be running around Circuit of the Americas. No, it's not November yet, but we get to have a little bit of fun. So that wraps up Trofeo Pirelli, but stay tuned because we also have Copa Shell qualifying coming up soon. For Brian Till and Amanda Busick, I'm Shay Adam. Thanks for joining us.